Welcome everyone to this book launch for Duncan McDwee-Ra for his book Skateboarding and Urban Landscapes in Asia. First, I just want to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal country of the people of the Eora Nation, and acknowledge Aboriginal people, elders past and present, and people present here today. We've known Duncan for a very long time. He used to work with us at UNSW for about 10 years. He's currently a professor of urban studies at the University of Newcastle. And we're here today to celebrate his new book, Skateboarding and Urban Landscapes in Asia. Duncan has a very sort of long and distinguished career at UNSW. He was our Associate Dean for Research. He's published many books. He's the editor on a series of different journals, including Southeast Asian Studies. Is that right?
South Asia.
South Asia Studies. Sorry, I was close.
Regional boundaries should be destroyed anyway.
And yeah, we're here to celebrate this new book, Skateboarding and Urban Landscapes in Asia. So first, I want to invite Duncan to give a talk for about 15-20 minutes about the new book, and then afterwards we're going to have John Carr, Dr. John Carr, speak about the book as well, give his response about the book for about 10 minutes. Okay, I'll hand over to
Dan.
Professor Duncan McDwee-Ra. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you so much for coming. This is actually, it's a little emotional for me, I think, in lots of ways, because although Dan and I think, started at UNSW about the same time, and we became kind of fast friends, I think, in around 2007, but I actually did my PhD there. So I realized I've spent the majority of my adult life at UNSW in some way. That's both tragic, sad, but also makes me very nostalgic. And so it's really meaningful because this was a weird career move in lots of ways. I was pretty tired of what I was doing before. I'd kind of gone through all the academic promotion levels. I'd done all this work in Northeast India, and I was really quite exhausted mentally as well. The region I was researching, people were still killing each other more than when I started researching there, destroying the environment more than when I started researching there, and it was pretty depressing. And so in the background, I was secretly doing this since about 2014, like secretly. And probably was when I changed jobs, I kind of had the space to sort of reinvent myself a little bit. But certainly there's quite a lot of continuities there to work I'd started to do in the Himalaya on sort of concrete and the materialities of concrete in new urban spaces being built rapidly and all this kind of stuff. And I sort of reached a point thinking, what do I do now? What do I do next? What do I know? I can't go learn another language. I don't have 3 years to stop working and do it. It's not like when you're doing your PhD and you can do that kind of stuff. And a friend of mine who I researched with in the Himalayas, she said to me, you already do speak another language. I was like, what are you talking about? She goes, you speak this other language. I've heard you speak it. I was like, what are you talking about? Because when we do field work together, I'd watch skate videos and I'd say stuff to her like, check out that nollie heel flip. And she'd be like, ugh. And I was like, oh, she said, you really do speak another language. Just think about that and think about what you want to do with that. And so this book is sort of the outcome of that process. So it's kind of a homecoming today in two ways. One, coming back to UNSW, where I spent so much of my career, but also sort of my kind of my 30s and late 20s. And also coming back to sort of my upbringing, my childhood, which was really based and centered around skateboarding, and being able to sort of bring that back into thinking about Asia and urbanization in Asia was really amazing project to do. I don't think I would have finished it if it wasn't for COVID, which is rare to compliment COVID for anything, but I think it gave me a bit of space and time to do it. So I'm very nervous having John here because I actually cite his work in the book. But it also makes me a little sad that maybe if I'd hung on a little bit longer, we could have had a cabal of people who work on sort of skate geographies in the faculty, and maybe sort of broke the research budget on buying skate hardware and stuff like that. Anyway, I've just got a short passage I want to read that I think really sums up what the book is about. I guess the whole book is based on understanding that in skate culture, what really matters is doing tricks at a spot. And this is a skate park, and a really good skate park. But if you have a look at it, with the exception of the bowls, it's set up to look like the street. There's handrails, there's stairs, there's bumps, there's ledges. So it's mimicking the built environment as it would sort of naturally occur. And to sort of count in skate culture, tricks need to be performed in places they're not supposed to. More and more, all over the world, from Myanmar to Sydney, from Palestine to Jamaica, authorities are building parks like this, which is incredible. I mean, there wasn't stuff like that when I was growing up. But these are not really the spaces talked about in the book. That's skateboarding where you're supposed to. This book is interested in skateboarding where you're not supposed to, which still has the kind of the stranglehold in the culture, the legitimacy. So you go practice something there, you'll film it out there somewhere. And that brings in all these other things about the law, about encounters with civilians, about where you find these spots, etc., etc., etc. So the subtitle of the book is Endless Spots, and it plays on this idea that Asia's full of endless spots because urban growth there is so rapid compared to a lot of the rest of the world, but particularly the US. And that the attitude towards skateboarding is much more lax compared to the US. And so I'm going to read the kind of video about the video that really kind of tweaked this to me in my mind, and that sets up the rest of the book. Then I'll hand it over to John to roast me, and when he's done with that, I'm going to give him a copy of the book so he can continue to roast me as time goes on. So this section is called Escaping the California Gridlock. Menek Marty, a full-length skate video from the shoe brand S, features some of the biggest names in skateboarding from the early 2000s. It was released in 2000 before instantaneous digital access to unlimited content became the norm. Because of this, videos like Menek Marty had a really long viewing life. You'd watch it, you'd rewatch it, you'd pirate it, you'd give it to your friends. You'd give it to your friends on a 3-hour tape with other skate videos pirated on it, and then someone's like recorded episode of Sons and Daughters or something like that. But that bit is in the book, that was ad-libbed. In the last decade, Menek Marty's been uploaded to video sharing platforms in its entirety, and it's sort of had a second digital life. Key parts of the video have been viewed up to 500,000 times in the last time I checked. Menek Marty features an hour of some of the most innovative skateboarding of the time, and it's aged pretty well. And this team that are featured in the video from Finland, Brazil, England, Canada, the US. It also features short narratives as voiceovers at the start of each of the parts, which is quite unusual for skateboarding, and especially at the time. And two of these stand out, and I think really hit on what this book's about. The first part featuring Finnish pro skater Arto Saari, and the last part featuring Thai-American pro skater Eric Costin. Menek Marty is not the first video to identify skateboarding as a globalizing culture or to celebrate the diverse origins of famous skateboarders. However, it is significant to this book for two reasons. First, Menek Marty presents global spots as on par with spots in the US. Spots in Asia in the video are spliced with spots from the US and Europe, enrolling them in a global cartography of urban landscapes worth skating, landscapes with good spots. Secondly, the video provides commentary on spots in ways that express disappointment with urban landscapes in the US, especially California's famous spots, and surprise at the abundance of spots elsewhere, a theme that accelerates through the 2000s to the present. At the beginning of Arto Saari's part, the opening part in the video, the screen zooms into a map and stops at Finland. Saari's voiceover begins and he discusses what it was like growing up in Finland over shots of Helsinki, snow, skiing and ice swimming. Over a background of violin music, Saari speaks in Finnish during this montage, with subtitles up on the screen. At one point, he discusses the challenge of skateboarding in a historic city in lines translated in English as, "Skateboarding in Finland is not easy because the architecture is very old and the seasons are very long." He ends his Finnish narration with a line translated as, "I didn't see myself going anywhere with skateboarding staying in Finland. That's why I decided to move to Huntington Beach, California." The scene shifts to California. Surf music plays, waves lap the Huntington Beach pier, and Saari starts speaking in English about the warm and sunny weather. There's sunshine in every shot. The story is Saari, a talented skateboarder, leaves his grey and cold homeland for the sunshine and freedom of California. It's the American dream. But Menek Marty is not that predictable. Immediately, the montage cuts to images of anti-skateboarding signage on walls. Saari's driving a car stuck in heavy traffic. Security guards are accosting skateboarders, and the ubiquitous skate stopper or skate knobs that you see in buildings all around the place these days. Metal objects added to make the surface of a concrete ledge or handrail uneven or dangerous and difficult to skate are in all these shots. Saari continues in English over the top of this montage. People all over the world come to California thinking they can skate all the famous spots they see in the videos. But they don't know you have to stay in traffic an hour and a half every day to go to a spot. And most of the time you get kicked out. You get hassled by cops, you get tickets, or the place is already knobbed. More and more spots get ruined every day by skate stoppers or stuff they put in front of the stairs. Everything is skate-proofed. But that's not going to stop skateboarding, because there's always new spots to be found. Or you can just hack the knobs off, or whatever. You just have to make spots skatable again. It takes a little effort. I came to California to live the life I dreamed of. Even though it's not the same as I thought it was going to be, it's still great. Here, Manic Marty foreshadows a shift in the culture. Sari's voiceover shatters any illusions of California as a skateboarding paradise. This theme runs through contemporary skateboarding. Spots are disappearing from US cities, and new spots are not emerging with the same speed as elsewhere in the world, especially Asia. The spots that are still skatable are monitored by overzealous security guards, police, and a hostile public. When Manic Marty was being shot 2 decades ago, Asia was not central to the global cartography of skate spots, but it was beginning to show up. And in the same video, Eric Costin describes the appeal of Bangkok. Costin is a singular figure in skateboarding then and now, and especially for my generation. He's been highly influential in the culture from the 90s to the present for his skateboarding and his personality, very goofy and affable, yet incredibly gifted. At the time of Manic Marty's release, he was perhaps the most recognizable street skateboarder in the world. And it's safe to say his part in the video has been viewed hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of times, making his short narration at the beginning of his part about Bangkok worthy of detailed attention. Costin's part begins with a map zeroing in on Thailand. Over classical Thai music, the montage of images commences. As you'd expect, temples, street food vendors, images of King Bhumibol, urban waterways, Buddha statues. Costin's voiceover begins by mentioning that he was born in Bangkok, but didn't grow up there, having moved to California when he was very young. He admits, "I always had this image of this sort of traditional Thai city, which is the case when you walk through the historic district with all the old temples. Then the scenery changes. It cuts to long-distance shots of tall buildings, including the Bayok Tower, the SkyTrain, and close-ups of traffic and traffic police in their distinctive skin-tight brown uniforms." Costin's voiceover continues over these images. But if you go to the east side of the city, there's a huge contrast. You've got big skyscrapers, sky trains, insane traffic, which cause so much pollution that people wear surgical masks so they don't have to breathe in that garbage. Costin is pictured standing by the side of the road with a skateboard, and he's got his shirt over his face. He says, "With every modern city, you can usually find skate spots, and the ones we found were really good. But of course, there were security guards there. All we did was told them we were there to do work and gave them a little bit of money, which barely equaled $2, and they let us skate, even for beer and cigarettes." At this point, the montage cuts to a group of Thai security guards in uniform, sitting on a staircase, drinking beer from bottles and smoking cigarettes, as Costin rides past them and performs a backside 50-50, grinding down the right angle on both trucks, down the hubba, a ledge that's angled consistent with the staircase. He adds, "It's crazy, because that would never happen in the US." There are shots of him doing some tricks on a roadside with heavy traffic in the background, and he says, "Even with all the good spots we found, I didn't see that many skaters. And it makes me think, if I'd have grown up in Thailand, chances are I would probably have never skated. So I could have ended up doing other things, like training to be a champion Thai kickboxer, or maybe even a Buddhist monk. Who knows?" Pause, but nah, I don't think so. While he's saying this, they show Costin attempting Muay Thai with a local trainer, and then pretending to meditate in Buddhist robes. With his closely shaved head and the dim lighting, Costin certainly looks the part, until he raises his head and smiles at the camera, saying, "Nah, I don't think so." And from there, Costin's part begins in earnest, including footage of spots in Bangkok along with other parts of the world. So here's the point of this. Costin marvels at Bangkok's modernity. As he notes, wherever there's a modern city, there are spots. The assemblages of concrete, marble, and steel are wide. The open spaces are new, untouched, and barely policed. Revisiting his past 2 decades later, one can't help asking, what exactly is being globalized here? What is traveling? Costin's traveling, along with the filmers and the other skaters. The performance of skateboarding is traveling, the skill, the flair, the creativity, the repurposing of the urban landscape. However, it's also the gaze that travels, the aesthetics, the codes of appearance that promote a common vision of space shared by skaters and filmers, de-linked from maps, surveys, census data, etc. Furthermore, this gaze largely eschews showpiece infrastructure of the city, which is usually crowded and policed. Costin's not in Bangkok to perform in front of legions of fans. He's not there to skate in front of famous temples or palaces, malls or SkyTrain stations. He's there to scour the urban backstage for spots, perform tricks displaying skill and creativity, and crucially, have these captured as video or image and circulated and consumed worldwide. His livelihood depends on this. In spreading Costin's skateboarding, videos like Manic Mighty spread the skater gaze. Bangkok too has a shred skate. Bangkok too is full of spots. But it's not just the modern landscapes that are a surprise. The lax attitude of the security guards is a revelation, something that would never happen in the US. In one brief flash in footage of his part, Costin is seated with those security guards on the staircase, and they all raise a toast to the camera. They all raise beer bottles, Costin raises a water bottle. Costin's found spots, he's supplied the security guards with beer, and yet he has one more marvel to share. The city's almost empty of skaters, untouched, uncolonized land. And while this may have been scripted for dramatic effect, so Costin could pontificate over how his life may have turned out had he been raised in Bangkok, Bangkok is certainly not empty of skaters. Though in the early 2000s they may have been a bit harder to find given the absence of digital tools we now take for granted. Bangkok has a thriving skate community concentrated in the city itself and in other parts of the country. Thailand's preeminent skate brand Produce has released 6 full-length videos since 2005 Smooth, not long after Costin was filming Manic Mighty. Like the Bangkok sequences in Manic Mighty, these videos capture a different perspective on the city to what might be found in tourist advertisements or travel documentaries, exotic, transgressive, timeless, and to promotional material from the Bangkok Municipal Authority, orderly, hygienic, modern. Watching Produce's catalogue of videos is to witness Bangkok's landscape stripped of exotic allure. It's all ledges, stairs and handrails, cement, asphalt, tiles and steel. The contrast between Bangkok of the imagination and Bangkok as it is materially on the ground. Certainly new infrastructure creates new spots in Bangkok, often at the high cost to residents, but it's desired by skateboarders. For instance, the construction of the Rama 8 suspension bridge across the Chao Phraya River, which you can see in the background on the cover, was completed in 2002. It's created a near perfect skate spot underneath the bridge on the western bank of the river. This spot features in almost all skate videos from Bangkok and hosts visiting skaters and filmers, skate demos and local contests. Producers even released a short video just on that spot. This way of seeing the urban landscape carries over to other parts of Thailand featured in many produced videos, and in their travels to other parts of Asia, such as to Malaysia, Hong Kong and Singapore for Selamat, which was produced in 2016, and China, mostly Chengdu for Supermix. So as Costin once traveled to Bangkok chasing modern urban infrastructure in search of spots, Thai skaters search for spots in other parts of Asia. Produce, the skate company who is based in Bangkok, produce and distribute a map of Bangkok's skate spots in English and Thai, available online and as a physical map from their shop in Bangkok, and there's a copy of it in the book. The map features official skate parks, DIY spots, popular street spots, with cross-references to landmarks and public transport. This is Bangkok's spots. This is Bangkok's shred space. And finally, for Costin in the early 2000s, Bangkok seemed relatively untouched. A city to explore, to seek out spots, to seek out skaters, and most importantly, to capture content on video. The idea of exploration, of seeking out spots in the urban landscape that can be skated and tracking down local skate communities, takes skateboarders and content creators to new frontiers. While in retrospect the idea of Bangkok being untouched by skateboard in the early 2000s seems dubious, the act of traveling to new frontiers has become a standard aspect of a globalizing gaze. Delhi, Tehran and Astana are the Bangkoks of the 2010s and 2020s. Now it's time for a true confession. When I first saw Manic Mighty, I'd never been to Bangkok. A year or so after its release, I was in Bangkok en route from Myanmar, and I spent my time searching for Costin spots. I sought the modern city, the marble, the concrete and steel. I really hoped to see the brown uniformed security guards sitting on staircases having a beer watching skateboarders. In later years, I researched the relationships between enforcement of intellectual property rights and control of street space in Bangkok with none other than Daniel Robinson. Work that took us all over the city, from its capitalist core to peripheral urban hubs around transport interchanges. Even during this project, I couldn't help myself. I stole away to see if Costin's spots were still there, despite the city having grown dramatically and perhaps unrecognizably, and despite the challenges of reading its surfaces and juxtapositions. To be clear about this, and this is where I'll close, 15 years after Manic Mighty came out, I was still wandering around different parts of the city, sniffing out clues, cross-referencing online maps, looking at photos and seeing if they resembled the buildings in front of me. It's not simply that Costin opened a classic video party in Bangkok. It's that the images and moments, the footage of the city, of the urban landscape, of the backstage, the spots where he skated, travel to skaters all over the world. And we watch them again and again and again and again. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for organizing this, and particularly for your welcome to country. Given how much skateboarding implicates and involves appropriation of space and reappropriation of space, I think that's a really fitting way to engage with this. Thank you so much, Duncan, for writing such an engaging book, which I want to talk a little bit about. And if I'm inarticulate, just consider that me being part of skate culture into this presentation. There are moments in life that can really bring you a vantage point on how much and how rapidly things have changed. Seeing a photo of one's grown or growing children as toddlers, returning to one's hometown, reconnecting with a long-lost friend, or in my case, running across the overhead projector transparencies that were once my choice of visual aid while lecturing at university. These things give us pause to recognize how much things have changed and advanced. Reading Duncan's book, Skateboarding in Urban Landscapes in Asia, has definitely been one of those moments for me. It is amazing to be here in Sydney discussing an academic book, let alone an academic book of such breadth and thoughtfulness on skateboarding, having started skateboarding back in the 1970s, when skateboarding was just another new, albeit mind-bending approach to play and using the sidewalks and spaces of the cities. Reading the book has really given me an opportunity to step back and reflect on how far skateboarding has come spatially, how far it's come politically and socially, how its practices and cultures have literally spanned the earth and have permeated unexpected dimensions of culture and economics. And Duncan's really done a lovely job of putting into words the power of this particular practice. To my mind, skateboarding is like alchemy. It magically transforms the most quotidian, brutalist, market-driven, nationalist, government-imposed built environments and turns them into arenas, turns them into clubhouses, turns them into launching pads from which you can launch not just a trick, but travel, lifeways. You can even launch a career. You can even launch an academic career. This is mind-bending for me. And Duncan's book reminds us that skating offers one of the most utopian and radical rethinkings. In fact, real-time renegotiation of what urban environments can be, even beyond graffiti, which I love, which really deals with surfaces. Skateboarding deals with surfaces and spaces and flows and soundscapes and space-time, and even our thinking about what a human body is supposed to be, even our thinking about what daily life should be. It inserts play and discipline and irreverence and creativity and joy into a streetscape that often seems to be designed to quash those very qualities. And not only is skateboarding alchemic, the skateboard and practices of skateboarding can be very much a spatial and socioeconomic knife. And I say that not as something that can hurt people, which it certainly can, or destroy stuff, but I think of it as a tool, like a knife, that gives us an otherwise inaccessible cross-section through the city, even for a non-skater. And these can be spatial cross-sections, intertwining the architecture of spectacle, quotidian street furniture, the back stages of loading docks and stormwater drainage systems and bridge underpasses. But they can also be cultural cross-sections. That's one of the things that I think Duncan's book does such a beautiful job eliciting, how skateboarding can cut across an almost breathtaking range of identities and subcultures and groups and locations. Even I, as an admittedly crappy and somehow, even as a young person, always a bit overaged and underskilled skateboarder, have skated or hung out or shared a spot with a boggling cross-section of people. Truck drivers, ex-cons, feminist skate cooperative founders, X-Games ramp builders, architects, 1980s skate icons, the bass player from the grunge band Pearl Jam, pros headed through town on the way from one set of spots to another, professional skate park buildings, and seemingly hundreds of small inland oceans of kids and teens, even other academics. These are all social groups that, with my modest interest in skateboarding, I've been allowed to traverse. So given this alchemic, spatially and culturally cross-sectioning power, it's perhaps unsurprising in retrospect that this approach to the city, skateboarding, to motion, to autonomy, to the production of space, would be profoundly mobile and adaptive, as Duncan's book illustrates so beautifully. It's a form of resistance and reinvention that not only works for, but is needed in a spectrum of political, cultural, and economic contexts. Indeed, the spread of skateboarding across contexts that Duncan's research explores is particularly amazing to me as somebody who actually used a skateboard along with my partner, Tema Milstein, to get around in Beijing while teaching at university there in 2000. I actually had the experience right before the explosion that Duncan was describing of skateboarding through Tiananmen Square and being a bit of an individual spectacle as tourists from around China came to see what kind of insane things happen when you come to the capital. Men on holiday wearing loafers insisting they try a skateboard before almost cracking their skulls. Surveillance vans driving past us giving us the strangest look on their way to arrest people in Tiananmen Square. Sharing bicycle commuter lanes with donkey-driven carts hauling everything from coal to mattresses. It was truly a moment where there were two spots I remember specifically in downtown where there was actually a skate scene and this sense that something was about to happen, a critical mass that led Tem and I to actually give our skateboard equipment to some students of ours at Nungadaje, the agricultural university there in Beijing, thinking, well, maybe this will help grow a bigger scene. In many ways, not just based on my experience with Beijing, but knowing the little bit I know about skateboarding, the spread of this set of cultures and practices across international contexts is almost inevitable. I always say that nobody skateboards unless they have something to skate about. Skateboarding is really hard to be even bad at. It can be painful, it can be bloody, and few people in life pick it up and stick with it without it serving an urgent purpose in their life, an outlet, a place to put one's hope, one's creativity or frustration in ways that can't safely or unsafely happen in other ways. And this book reminds us there are a lot of places with a lot of kids who have a lot to skate about all around the world, and that the world contains a swelling number of urban spots for them to reimagine. Thus, skateboarding has, as Duncan so beautifully reminds us, become a knife that cuts across countries and continents, providing intriguing, informative, deep insights about the places it cuts through, the cross-sections that it reveals. And Duncan puts us right there, in the backstage to the world city, the backstage to the languishing provincial capital, the boomtown, all the backstages that make up so many of the spots re-envisioned by skaters. And yet, all of this said, it's really essential to recognize that there is, of course, always a backstage to the backstage of viewing the city as a shredscape. And I applaud Duncan's engagement with the complications and problems that occur in that backstage, whether it's the long recognized issues around male dominance and patriarchy in skateboarding, whether it's the potential of skateboarding to interact with or even feed into bigger, sometimes much more problematic political projects. Even the curious economics of commodifying urban rebellion and reinvention at a global scale, the unavoidable tendrils of international place marketing, and even the problematics of skaters themselves. Duncan does an empathetic yet probing job of exploring, whether it's their capacity to travel and bring white mischief to more and more spots around the world, our inadvertent or indifferent neo-colonial appropriation of urban spaces that are often emotionally resonant and important to locals in ways that skaters neither know nor care about. Even the potential of the skater gaze as paralleling at moments neoliberal development gaze. All of this Duncan does in a rich, immersive, and evocative way. And even beyond this essential critical take, Duncan reminds us, even those of us who might not otherwise care about skaters and skateboarding, of the power that comes in these complex assemblages that result from how our practices and technologies interact. Even technologies as low-tech as skateboards, and skateboards really are still breathtakingly low-tech. Even technologies as mature as video recording, or technologies as contemporary and rapidly developing as social media. Duncan reminds us that these assemblages are always imbricated within and productive of emerging geographies of technological unintended consequences. And these utopic unintended consequences can be utopic or dystopic in the same gesture, or, to use the skate term, in the very same move. Thank you, Duncan.